What if these intense callings that you're feeling right now to do this work that you're doing, what if it's not a sort of collaborative, co-creative work where the Spirit of Christ is coming alongside all of you within your very being, of your lineage, of your ancestors, working hand in hand? What if you have been invited to a beautiful, collaborative, co-creative, co-healing adventure? What if you have been born for such a time as this to do this, to bring restoration and reconciliation?
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in to listen to this episode. I felt strongly to share this moment I had back on October the 4th of this year. I began by exploring the idea of placing high expectations on myself, how others are mirroring that to me, how there has been the temptation to focus on fixing and coming to the rescue of others, and not to focus on and heal my own self, how I'm being guided to find a balance in how I use my energy, and then shifting to how I am being invited into a healing journey, really, of my past generations toward my future generations, and it begins with me. Of course, as you listen to this, take what resonates and consider it in your own life. Sure, I'm using the language of I and me, but you can very much apply that to yourself and think of it as speaking to your own self. And I will add that as I was making this recording, there are a lot of pauses in between what I'm saying. So feel free to turn up the speed. I will not be offended at all. Turn up the speed to 2 times if you need. And maybe that'll help. Thank you so much for listening, and I pray it leaves you inspired.
This is an important thing to reach this level of awareness, because the generational ancestral healing that you have been invited to be a part of is going to require grace and forgiveness. Did you know that, Ray? Yeah. Yeah, I do know that. This path that you're on, where you are working through unhealthy patterns passed on by your mother and father, their families, from their families, from their families, from their families. You get to be a part of this. It's you are aware of these things. You are here for such a time as this, Ray. Don't forget that. The very fact that you are aware of all of this, you are working on these things with this level of consciousness, guess what that means? You're the one, Ray. You're the one. You're like Neo in the Matrix. You are the one to do this. And I know that little inner fundamentalist is saying to you, no, I'm not the one. Jesus is the one. To which I respond, well, who's here right now on the earth dealing with all this stuff? Is it Jesus? It's you, Ray. But of course, it helps to have a healthy perspective of this, Know it is not just you, it is Jesus working in you and through you to accomplish this. But do not for a moment devalue who you are and your role in all of this. Because guess what? Without you on this earth right now, this would not be happening. So, guess what? You're important. You are here because you are important. If you were not necessary on this earth right now, you would not be here. Oh, good point. And the fact that you have come to these awarenesses and you're working on all these things and your spirit is awake, is alive and well, you have been humbled through life's experiences. Guess what, Ray? You are the perfect candidate for the healing process, your family, your generations, who I would add are all a part of you. Think on that for a while. All of your ancestors, all of your whole lineage, they're inside of you. Their wisdom, their memories, it's inside of you. Think about that. What if these intense callings that you're feeling right now to do this work that you're doing, what if it's not a sort of collaborative, co-creative work where the Spirit of Christ is coming alongside all of you within your very being, because you are here on this earth and they are not. Physically, that is. What if you have been invited to a beautiful, collaborative, co-creative, co-healing adventure? What if you have been born for such a time as this to do this? What if this is why you sense this high expectation energy, this urgency? What if the source of this feeling, this energy that you have, is the excitement, the anticipation of your lineage, of your ancestors, working hand in hand with Jesus to bring restoration and reconciliation to your lineage, to your family, which is now in you? What if you are the one to do that? Because I can tell you with absolute certainty, Ray, you are the one to do this. You have received the call. You are aware of the call. You understand the layers and the dimensions and the energies involved in all of this. And even if you don't understand it on an immediate conscious level, you understand it intuitively, spiritually, on a very deep level that you don't have to explain. You just get it. That in itself is a miracle, is a wonder. Do not take that for granted. Keep walking this path. What if you are here for such a time as this? Well, it's not a what if, it's an I know I am here for such a time as this. I have these awarenesses. Therefore, I have been called to do this. I would not have this depth of awareness, this depth of conviction and confidence and excitement and deep intuition if there was not something powerful here that I'm onto. And the more I talk about it, the more I consider it, the more I come into alignment with it. I'm reminding myself this is important. This is powerful. This is one of the reasons why I am here. You know why I believe this so strongly? Because of all the people you know, of all the people that I know, who else in your family was born from your family with the capacity and the understanding and the awareness of your family's dynamics and history? Who else better than me to do this work? Well, I can tell you this. There is myself and there is my brother. We are part of this lineage. Between myself and my brother, and anyone else in our family that is currently here on this earth, we are the ones helping one another through this healing process. So that, as we have heard before, those generational curses that would have been passed down can turn into generational blessings. So that the generational tendencies of passing on trauma can turn into generations of vitality, health, love, peace, and all the other things that I don't need to say, but I think you get what I'm getting at here. It's the shift. Ooh, just saying that word did something to me. You know, I think, well, I know a lot of us have this idea of what this shift may be, of this thing that we feel is coming up, that we have this anticipation towards. And I think many of us, including myself, are stuck in a place wondering, how much longer do I need to wait? This thing that's outside of me. Will I know when the shift is happening, when it arrives? And to that, I will propose this. Perhaps it's not an outward shift. Perhaps it's an inward shift. And this shift is then experienced in an outward way. Once it happens on the inside, oh, I'm getting chills as I'm talking about this. Perhaps the shift you've been eagerly anticipating and waiting for has been waiting for you to shift so that it can manifest in your life. And this highly resonates with some of the other things I've been thinking about lately, how we have this tendency to wait on God, wait on God. You're not praying hard enough. You don't have enough faith. When in reality, perhaps God is waiting on us. That God has faith in us, but we don't have faith in ourselves. God has given us all the measure of faith. That doesn't mean we have small faith, big faith. Some of us have been given more than others. No, we've all been given faith. We all have it. We all have this capacity. And I see it like a muscle. You got to exercise it, and it becomes stronger. I think many of us are sitting here being like, God, what are you going to do about this? And God's like, yo, you're on the earth right now. My spirit is in you. I've equipped you and given you everything you need. It's your hands and your feet on the earth right now. What are you going to do? How are you going to activate your faith? How are you going to be courageous and get past that fear? I'm not going to take that away from you. That fear is there for a reason. It is inviting you to be courageous. I'm not going to take away that fear. No, you got to move past it yourself. While I'm here with you, cheering you on. What are you going to do? What are you waiting for? What is keeping you from moving forward? What fear is antagonizing and tormenting you? What would happen if that fear didn't exist and you just said that thing or did that thing? What would that do in your life? How would that affect those around you? How do you think you would feel moving into that kind of way of being, saying and doing those things? And then, of course, the next question is, what's stopping you? And a little piece of encouragement, the fear can be your greatest ally, because the fear is can be seen as an invitation to courage, to faith. And this has been integrating much deeper in me these days. God has really been working on me. How in the scripture it often says, this person's faith made them well. This person's faith pleased God. And I'm not just reflecting on this because the Bible says so. I'm reflecting on this because I've experienced this in my life. And I've realized how a lack of faith has led to a lack of really living my life. And that when I finally took that leap of faith and started stepping out and putting myself out there and doing things I was afraid to do before, is bringing a whole another level of life into my experience. You know why it pleases God? Because God knows what our lives can become if we can get past that fear. And God smiles and goes, yeah, that's my son. That's my daughter. I'm so proud. Look at them really living their lives. Look at them enjoying everything around them, experiencing the thrill of what it is to move beyond the fear, to live in faith, to live in trust, in surrender, to let go. Look at how it's changed their lives. I'm so proud of them. Just like a loving parent would be toward their own children. It brings a smile to our Creator's face to know that we are living a life of love, of courage, not a life held back by fear. Oh, I didn't know I was going to get into this today. I am. So we may be like, God, take away this fear. I don't want to be afraid to do this thing. If you take away the fear, I'll do it. And God's like, you don't get it. That fear is there for a reason. And once you want it bad enough, once you've been tormented long enough, you will move past that fear. And when you finally do, you will realize that there was nothing to be afraid of in the first place. That fear only existed in your mind. It wasn't real. And then you will be free. Ooh, more chills. This is the life I'm experiencing now. And my challenge has been this. Okay, now that I'm stepping into this reality and I'm experiencing what it is like to live a life of faith over fear, love over fear. I know there's hope too, but we're not talking about that right now. Faith, hope, and love. Sorry, I'll stay focused. I got to figure out how to balance this because I am a very excitable person. When I get to a place where I am charged and confident and not afraid, I am full of so much energy to do this. And I got to remember to balance myself and to take time to slow it down a little. Or my foot will be hard on that gas pedal and I will be going really fast. It's like setting your car on cruise control. I need to learn how to find that zone where the energy is being put toward good things, helpful things, is taking me in a certain direction, in a sustainable, manageable way, at a speed that I can handle. And this is a whole nother conversation because I'm sure many of us can tolerate different speeds while we drive that car. Some of us like it faster, some of us like it slower. Know thyself. What's your speed? What can you sustain over the long term? Because remember, life is not a sprint. It is a marathon. And don't be like me, where I remember I got into a 10-mile race once, not training much at all for it, as has been my tendency. And I'm like, yeah, I could just show up and run 10 miles, no problem. I did have maybe 2 or 3 long runs before that, but mostly like 5, 6 mile runs, 7 mile runs, but not full on 10-mile race. Well, I shot off that finish line full of adrenaline, full of energy, thinking, yeah, it's going to be a good race. Look at my pace. I'm doing so good. And then after about a mile, I'm like, yeah, I started a little too hard and a little too fast. And now I got to find a way to sustain a pace till the end of the race, as the others who I passed are now passing me. Well, the good news is we're all going to finish that race. We're all going to get there. But I think there's a way to make it a lot more enjoyable and sustainable and exciting for ourselves if we can lock into that pace, so that as we are running the race, we are not so preoccupied with, do I have the drive and the motivation and the energy to finish this race? No, then we can get to a place where we're like, I'm just going to enjoy the ride. I'm going to enjoy the sights along the way because I know my pace. I know what I can sustain, and I will finish this race. But rather than thinking about whether or not I can make it to the finish line this whole race, I know I will. I'm just going to enjoy the run as I get there. Oh, okay. How do I wrap this all together? Because that was a lot. High expectations. Just like the 10-mile race or driving in a car, I can have such high expectations of myself that I push myself so hard, harder than anyone expects me to do, in such a way that it will not be sustainable toward finishing the race, getting to the destination in a way that I'm not completely exhausted and worn out by the end. This is where self-care is so important, in finding that balance between outflow and inflow, where we don't live our lives with a barely full cup, barely empty cup, pouring out what little we have into those around us, and having so little left over that we just wear ourselves out, become defeated, unmotivated, cynical, depressed, isolated. We lose interest in helping others because we have not helped ourselves. And then we think helping others is bad. No, not helping ourselves has not been good. There needs to be a healthy balance. So the unhealthy expectations need to be brought back into a healthy balance. One that is sustainable, one that can last for the long term, where there can be a balance of putting this energy out there toward whatever project or passion or dream or thing that I'm building is. And then there is a balance of receiving energy in whatever form that may be. Then there was the topic of fear, faith, and love, and of working through generational trauma and wounds and being the one to heal those things. Well, how wonderful to walk, to step into that calling, into that role with a spirit of love and not of fear, where you begin to actively and intentionally do the work, where you can really begin to see the part your smaller story plays in the grander story, where you realize that you are here for such a time as this. Otherwise, you would not be here. You would be hanging out in the spirit realm somewhere, but you would not be physically here on this earth. But the very fact that you are here means that there is a deep purpose and mission to your life. You know it too. And life will smack you around enough until you finally come to this realization, or allow this realization to to accept it. Right? This is your mission, should you choose to accept it. The mission isn't going away. And if you don't accept a particular mission, things may shift and change throughout life. But that doesn't mean that there isn't a mission for you right now. You may think you missed it, that there were things in your life you could have or should have engaged in, but you didn't because you were afraid. Okay. We've all been there. Not just you. The question is, now that you're aware of this, and perhaps you had that idea for that invention or that website that someone else ended up doing, and you're like, oh man, I could have done so well if I would have just done that thing. Okay. Well, now the next time something comes around, because it inevitably will, that's how things work. Ideas and inspiration are floating around in the air all the time. We are all able to tune into these things and receive them and act on them. The next time you tune into that idea or that inspiration, do something about it. Act on it. That's the wonder and the beauty of living here on this earth. Every single day, there is magic floating in the air that can lead to people, opportunities, abundance, wealth, happiness, peace, joy, experiences of love. They're all floating around all the time. We have the capacity to tune into these things all the time, every single day. If we are not experiencing the fullness of life, this means we are not tuning in, we're not connected, or we just don't know how. But let me just leave you with this tantalizing idea. All these things are floating around in the air, if you will. All of this energy is floating around within this dimension. And I would add, in multiple dimensions, which we can experience as well. Think on that one for a while. But just because you're not experiencing it does not mean it does not exist. It's there. And there are many of us who will say, it's there. We've experienced it in our lives. We can't explain it, but we've experienced it. We know it's there. And perhaps science cannot prove it, but that does not mean it's not real and it doesn't exist. Because the things exist before the science can prove them. Gravity existed before it became a law. Gravity didn't just start existing because science proved it to be the case. We are the experiencers. And there are opportunities and ideas floating around, inspirations floating around every single day. And you get to tune into that. And then share that with the rest of us. Because guess what? We can be receiving the very same things. And this is a fun phenomenon where I will often receive an inspiration about some concept or an idea or an example or an analogy. And then somewhere along the way, I'll read it in a book or I'll hear somebody else say it, maybe in a different way, but with the same kind of awareness or realization. And I'm like, how cool is that? We are all way more connected than we think we are. Just think on that one. I'm just sitting on that, what I just said right now. When you can come to that awareness and live into that every single day, how we are much more connected than we really think we are. This world becomes so magical, mystical, makes you curious. It brings the sense of wonder and awe and excitement, amazement back into life, back into creation, back into our Creator, our guide, our helper, our source of inspiration. Thank you for listening to me today. I just had to let this one out. And I pray that this inspires you and that you run with this. And if you need to listen to it again, listen to it again. Receive the energy behind what I'm saying. Receive the confidence, receive that love, receive that ability to push beyond that fear. Receive that fire into your own life, that burning desire in your heart. Feel into that. Thank you so much for listening. Be in peace, be in love, and be inspired.